Let's go, Paul. So we're going to just start today talking about the book that what schools could be. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to what the book was about, and I am going to be a little stiff as I read a little bit here. So, What Schools Could Be, which was Ted Dintersmith, as we know, was an inspiring account of teachers in ordinary circumstances doing extraordinary things, showing us how to transform education, which is what we're all about, right? Getting people excited about it again. So this Ted Dintersmith, who was an innovation expert, as they described him, took a trip across the country. I took a trip across America, visited all 50 states in a single school year. And his goal was to set out and raise awareness about the need to reimagine education and to prepare students for a world marked by innovation. What he found on this journey really surprised him even more than he ever imagined. He really did meet teachers doing extraordinary things and in ordinary settings, as they said, doing extraordinary things. He did meet people creating innovative classrooms where children were learning deeply and joyously and gaining what he called creating these peak classrooms, right? Purpose, essential skills and mindsets, agency, and real knowledge. So I think one of the things that we really found interesting about this book was that it did set out a sense of urgency and a mission to the country. But I feel like in this book, as we were reading it, it was done in an optimistic and inspirational way and not we should be scared and we've all been doing things wrong. So today we have our special guest, Dr. Paul Romanelli, who is the guy who introduced me to this book. Thank you so much. So before I let him come in and say hi, I just want to give you a quick bio about Dr. Romanelli. He is the superintendent of schools in West Islip School District in New York. He's been serving communities here on Long Island for more than 20 years. I don't know how that's possible. You look like you're 30, but beginning as a mathematics and literacy teacher at Oldfield Middle School, we got to unpack that one. I want to know what that's about. And then making the leap into administration, he served as a dean of students at Harborfields, I'm assuming, and then a middle school assistant principal at Plainview Old Bethpage. We'll give shout outs to all the schools out there. So that's why I'm naming them. And then an assistant super of curriculum and instruction in Long Beach, and now finally a superintendent of schools. Super excited to have you at our inaugural broadcast of the Head for Knowing podcast, Dr. Romanelli.
I love that. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Kerry. Any day I get to talk to you is a good day.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, we do have to usually end our conversations with a running out the door because we stayed too long and we chatted too much about.
I shut my doors though, and I was like, listen, I'm going to be on with Kerry Leo for a little bit. No interruptions.
Thank you. I feel so special. So you started at Harborfields. Is that where you began?
Yes, that was in 2003, and I started there as a math and literacy teacher. I was there for about 10 years at Oldfield Middle School and loved it there. Got my.
You have to tell me, how are you a mathematics and literacy teacher?
Oh, sixth grade. See,
you just were sixth grade.
The elementary certification there, so I got to do kind of the best of both worlds. And Kerry, I don't know if I told you this, but my dad was a male elementary school teacher, and I had 3 male elementary school teachers as well during my time there. And I majored in elementary education. I was like, this is, a man's job. And I showed up on the first day of college, and there were about 23 women in my class and myself. And did my student teaching. I was the only male in the buildings, and but I got my special education certification K through 12 as well. So I eventually wound up kind of in the middle school setting and had my math extension, 7 through 12. So kind of did best of both worlds, elementary and secondary.
That really is. I mean, that is a super necessary span of skills you got there. Being a male, sorry, but I'm calling that a skill. But being that, we need more of you as role models, and that your dad was your role model.
For sure.
That's I love that. And I just went right to middle school thinking, okay, middle school math and literacy, and not thinking, oh yeah, you're still an elementary teacher if you're in 6th grade. But you did get the extension. So you're
Yeah,
not
yeah. And I
afraid of
actually wound
math.
up tutoring a bunch of students. I had a bunch of students for sixth grade, and I wound up tutoring them 7 through 12, kind of like one-on-one at the public library. And so kind of saw them through their whole secondary journey. So got to learn the curriculum that way as well.
Well, we'll have to have you back on when we do our math session, because that's a whole thing about this like fear of math. And even, some of the teachers that we work with who are amazing teachers, and they just have this block up that, I am not good at math, and so therefore I don't love to teach it. Meanwhile, it really doesn't have to be that way. Let's just put it like that.
Right. And I would just say, because I talked about that all the time, Kerry, is that the early years with math, and even like that's why sixth grade was my favorite. I got to teach sixth grade math favorite year, because it's just so applicable to what we do on a day-to-day basis. And there's so many real life connections. So I
Yeah.
think students can really see, the purpose of what they're learning and the importance of it. And you can make it fun and hands-on. And it's really, I always thought math was fun. So I know some people, not everyone feels that way, but always felt it was the like the best subject in school.
And I do think it is about perspective. So we already have the human resources who can help us with the math dilemma, so to speak. We just have to shift perspective. We don't need to train them differently. I really do think it's about perspective. Like, you're already doing this. But I mean, we don't have to go into my journey too far, because everybody will have heard it so many times by now. But my journey, I was a marketing major in college and worked in the business world for a while, and then decided to go back into education. And I went through the special education conduit. And so therefore I was K through 12 special education. And I was thinking that I was going to be at the secondary level. And they literally threw me in and said, you're going to teach math and science and social studies. There was no, what do you like to teach? It was, this is where we need you to go. And I do remember the old school, I'm a little bit older than you, but the old school when we learned like integrated, right, math, it was called like, I don't even know, something integrated. And it was, algebra, geometry, trig, the 3-year thing. And I got handed a book when I was 27 years old. And they said, you got to go teach this kid. He had special needs, but they were more like anxiety and things. So he needed to learn trigonometry. And I was like, okay, I took trigonometry, but I just said, okay, I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to start from the answers and work my way backwards to teach him how we got there.
And isn't that though, that's so interesting, because there is a connection, to this book there that I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, but just the whole idea of that, education we're built on a system where everything is in these silos, and we have like math stands alone, and then social studies and science and ELA, but that's not the way it is in the real world, and just the opportunity the author had to visit all these classrooms across the country, I think is an amazing one. I've learned so much. I always say this, to the teachers, is that I learned so much when I first became an administrator just by visiting other classrooms and wishing that I had that opportunity as a teacher to see all the amazing things going on out there. There's so many great ideas and innovative things happening that sparked my interest, in the district that I'm in right now and previous districts that I've been in. I visited Colorado last year and saw a classroom. They were doing geometry and construction, building houses, and just learning geometry in that way, which is really, really cool way to do things. And it was really an interdisciplinary type course where, students weren't, it wasn't just math.
Right. And we just to consider how we could do things differently. So let's jump into the book. How did you find it? What did somebody put it in your hands? Was it just on the recommended reading list, or?
Yeah, we had been reading in Long Beach. I had been working with the superintendent there, Dr. Jennifer Gallagher. We always looked at different books each year that we like to read with our admin council. And, one of the big topics we had been talking about was innovation, and just kind of looking at different books out there about innovation. And this was, after reading a few, this was really the one that kind of clicked for both of us. So we said that we were going to, put this out there for everyone. We did a full staff book read, with the administrators, with teachers, with community as well, so it was a really great way to start the discussion about innovative schools.
And so I'm excited because now I was lucky to be part of your intro to your new district, and thank you for inviting me to come to watch the movie.
Most
Most
likely
likely
to
to
succeed.
succeed, right?
You had it.
It was really great, to watch the movie, of course, and be inspired by the film, but also to see the response from your community and other teachers. So now you've had the opportunity to do that in two places. So I think that you definitely have a broad-based feedback that you can share with us. So, I mean, this might be a tough thing to say, but for those people who haven't read the book, I tend to get super excited about things. And, it's like when you go to a conference or you read a book, you're so excited, and it's so difficult to share in one well-articulated sentence, like, why are you so excited about it? What was so great? But you've had some practice. So do you think that you could craft an overarching message, or is there too many that this book is trying to send out?
I think that the book is about meaningful learning, and that I think a lot of the times in education, we talk about, he, I think, uses this line in the book exactly, Ted Dintersmith. He says, it's not about doing obsolete things better. It's about doing better things, and really talking about, we don't have to continuously try to improve something that isn't necessarily working. It's really providing opportunities for students to learn meaningfully, to demonstrate knowledge. And the thing that really kind of clicked with me with this book recently is just the whole concept of artificial intelligence, right? And talking about technology and the fact that, machines have surpassed us when it comes to recalling information, right? One of the scenes in the movie that you brought up, Kerry, was, the episode of Jeopardy where IBM's Watson beats Ken Jennings, and it's kind of like the takeover of the recalling information. We've seen it lately with ChatGPT, even just my own kids asking Alexa, for different things. It's thinking about, the types of questions we're asking and really how we're asking students to demonstrate knowledge, like them really retaining the information and being able to apply it on a real world setting. So rethinking the way that we assess and the way that we demonstrate mastery of knowledge.
I think, and two, I think it's difficult for us as humans, for all of us collectively, to future cast and operate in the future, right? So one of the things they talked about was that we're building students for futures. We're building children's capacity to live and operate and thrive in a future that's not here yet, but we only have the tools that we have for the now. And I think I look at tools being all the resources too. And something I say to a lot of people when we're talking about trying to navigate a learning challenge or some type of learning problem or issue, is that all humans, most humans, particularly in the United States, have had an experience going through school. They went through school. So they have a very personal, visceral experience of what school looks and feels like, whether they become teachers or not. So we all have an opinion. And we all have this memory, this really like belief system and memory of what school's supposed to look like. So when you're saying about creating meaningful learning experience, that might be very, very different than what our experiences were. I see that as a challenge for many.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, one of the topics that Dintersmith brings up in the book is just the idea of companies like Google. There's a separate article and piece we did with our administrative team this year talking about how Google had this, hiring algorithm where they took a look at hiring, top students in mathematics and computer science, and then really took a look though at their top performing employees and saw that the employees weren't necessarily the top scoring in those areas. It was nice to have that background and foundational knowledge, but it was people who were excellent with communication and collaboration and working with a team and critical thinking, problem solving, like really those pieces that they brought to the table, being able to work with a team, were the most successful employees in the company. So thinking about designing an educational system that supports, how do we help our students to become better communicators, how do we help them to become better problem solvers, and looking at that across all content areas and grade levels. So that's the big work we're doing this year. We're working on creating a West Islip profile of a graduate to kind of identify in our community, those different skills, knowledge, habits, attitudes that we think our students need to be successful after school here in West Islip, and how we can best prepare them for that. So that's really some exciting work we've been.
I love to see that. I did want to bring up the profile of a graduate. Thank you, because you introduced me to that work that you guys were doing in West Islip, and you were bringing in all stakeholders in that process. Most importantly, the students to have input in what that should be, and they might be a little bit better at future casting than we are, because the sky's the limit to them, and we don't have jaded personalities with our younger ones. But
Carrie, can I tell you one thing about that?
Yeah,
too? Students, I was in, we surveyed the whole community after the film screening, and talked about, the important items that they wanted to select for our profile. And we're trying to create a visual representation for it as well. So I went into one of our teachers, Mrs. Kristen Tello's art and computer design, graphic design class the other day with our technology and innovation director, Dr. Patrick Cowley-Rendon, and also our assistant superintendent, Mrs. Dawn Morrison. And we presented to the students, and, I was wondering, as we were presenting, talking about the profile and then creating a visual representation of it, if they were into it and if they were interested in creating something, because it's kind of like a little bit of a flat audience, it was just said, couldn't really read the room that well. But as we were walking out, I saw, one student turn to another and say, I have the best idea ever for this. And they all kind of just started working on the computers. I went back in the other day, right before the weekend, and we have about 15 amazing logos that were submitted that we're going to select before our next board meeting, and just have that be our visual for the profile of graduates. So that's exciting as well.
That leads me right into the questions. You're anticipating my questions and answering before I ask them, because I was thinking, I was excited to see you guys talking about it. And okay, so it's the beginning of the year. I mean, it's the middle of the year, and it's your first year, second year.
This is my first year. I'm rounding out the first year. So
okay. Well, I feel like we've known each other forever, but you're coming in, and here's this guy coming in and bringing all these fancy names and books and things like that. So my question was going to be to you was, how do you keep the momentum? How do you get the buy-in from as many people as possible, so that this isn't just, like that hang in there kitty poster hanging on the wall, or just, irrelevant, wallpaper? How do you really
make such a great question? It's like that whole initiative fatigue idea, or just the one and done, flash in the pan type thing. I think it's using this as a framework for kind of what we're doing moving forward. So, the creation of the profile of a graduate for West Islip is really like the first step. We identified a couple different items. We want our students to be balanced. We want to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. We want them to be confident, and so on. But really using that as a North Star for the district, and talking about, putting that profile on the table when we're having conversations about teaching and learning. Maybe that's in a pre-observation conference with a teacher, talking about, how is this lesson going to represent, development of some of these profile of a graduate traits. It's looking, next year, summer work we plan to do is, if we've identified, being an effective communicator as one of the items. How does that look in a K through 2 classroom? How do we help develop that? How about 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12? And then the following year, looking at those in the different disciplines. How does this look in a social studies classroom? How does this look in a math classroom? So just keeping that work and that conversation going, and really keeping it at the forefront. I think that people are actually, I speak for myself personally, appreciative of when work happens and it continues and it stays in the forefront, and it kind of helps to develop a vision for the district. There's sometimes so many different things going on that it's tough to. Let me
throw an idea out at you, if I can. When I left you, and unbeknownst to me, I was going to stumble across another district that we're working with on the North Shore of in Nassau County, and I was doing some co-teaching work with them, and we were just getting to know each other. So we sent out a survey, and they asked for me to present the survey results so that they can get a sense of what their own needs were in regards to ICT development and training, so that we could make sure that the work that we're doing with them is relevant. And on the day that I was coming to present their data that we collected for them, it was a superintendent's conference day, and they said, hey, our whole day is designed around this profile of a graduate thing. And I went, so glad I met Paul Romanelli before he told me that, because I knew what they were talking about, right? And so they said, is there any way that you can stick a slide in, or just because we want to make sure that our initiatives are connected at literally the day of or the night before? No problem. So I called up their graphic that they created. I have no idea if they did the deep dive into this or not, but profile of a graduate is what they were talking about. And they did create this logo for that with the words in there. And I know you know Da Vinci and the work that we do, and we have 5 core values that when we go in to present to a school, we say, here we are, this is who we are, and this is how we promise to engage with you. And our 5, so it's almost like portrait of a Da Vinci collaborator. That's what we call ourselves. So collaborative, evidence and science-based, creativity, curiosity, and vulnerability. So we promise to engage with you this way. We ask for you to engage with us at least while we're here that way, and maybe these things will stick. So we've got our 5 core values that we're talking about. They handed me this slide with portrait of a graduate, and almost all of their words were, if not exactly the same, but very semantically similar. And it made me think, so here's where I led this whole big lead into you to say, maybe it's portrait of a West Islip member of the learning community. I said to the teachers, if this is what we're trying to build, then we have to behave this way as well. So we, in order to be, that's like, don't do as I say, not as I do. My classroom needs to be collaborative and curious, or whatever it is that you guys are working on, communication skills and all those things, effective communicators. As a teacher, am I an effective communicator? So I just was thinking about that. Like, it's a great, way to present, like portrait of a graduate, but we're building community members. So this is a portrait of a learner, and we're all learners. What do you think about that?
No, I love that thought. And, it's really, it does need to be at the center of everything. And I love that, different districts are doing this work. I love that you've done something similar with Da Vinci. It's really like, can be customized to what's important to a company or a community, and really personalized to the students and the learners, the people in the learning community as a whole, like you said, Kerry.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something that can be used, for all discussions. Talking about, if you brought up communication, what about classroom design? How are we designing our classrooms to foster effective communication? So really that's a big piece, is, looking at every aspect of what we're doing, and how do we innovate this, and I would also say just one additional thing in terms of the graduate piece is that I think we need to, schools sometimes struggle when, our students get through high school, they've graduated, great, wonderful. And many people will say, like, we've done our job, but, are we checking in with our alumni and our recent graduates or graduates, that are even further out, and talking about, like using the profile of a graduate for that, did we help you to become an effective communicator in high school? Did we have programs to help you to become, balanced in your life, things along those lines, and really using that feedback to shape, the programs that we have in the schools as well.
I have one of my earliest mentors in education was actually my high school English teacher. He taught humanities in Kings Park High School. We just lost him this past year, Leo Astabo, and he was you gotta love him or hate him kind of guy. But one of the things that I really truly adored and admired about what he believed in was that the students that we are working with are our greatest assets and our greatest resources. So he became the ombudsman for the community. And when he retired, he actually started a museum in Kings Park, the Kings Park Heritage Museum. And what he did was he felt that the way we stay connected with our graduates and ask them to come back and be the resource that helps our new students that are coming through. And he worked till he was in his mid-80s working on that, and I joined him on that mission. So I'm with you on that.
I love that. And don't you think, I wonder if Leo would agree with this idea, but it's just the whole idea of like, we need to stop as administrators in schools and districts micromanaging the teachers and what goes on in the classroom. There are so many, when you allow, creativity in the classroom, that transfers over to creativity in the students, and I think we're in this time right now where people are worried about, either it's getting into trouble for saying the wrong thing, having the best state test score, and kind of teaching to the test type situation. But really, there are so many amazing educators out there and so many amazing things going on in our classrooms across the country. And when people are allowed to, kind of be free and kind of help their, own development in the classroom, the students benefit from that as well. So I think that it's there has to be a balance there, and we let our teachers teach.
And you gave me a phenomenal overarching message, which was meaningful learning. I think that's the question, like, how is this meaningful? And one of the things that he asked in the book, but he also talked about it in the movie, they talked about it in the movie, was when you go around and you ask the students, why you're learning what you're learning, or what is that about? And the answers that he got, or the lack of answers, I should say, that he got was astounding. I mean, what do you think? Have you tried that? Do you think if you went around and asked kids, why are we learning this right now?
Yeah, I do that every time I enter a classroom. Actually, I'll ask students, that are in the room, what are you learning, or what are you working on, and I think when there's a clear learning target in place, and students can articulate, there's a difference between a student saying, we're doing page 86 of the workbook, or saying, we're
Right.
comparing and contrasting, the causes of these different wars, and so students being able to articulate what they're learning and also why they're learning it as well, I think is really important. So that's a big shift.
So, in the peak classroom, he talks about, purpose, essential skills, agency, knowledge. Let's go to agency for a minute there. So I think that's a really interesting thought to me. And I think perhaps even with some of the mental health crises that we can certainly say that we are, in the middle of at this point in our society, that role of agency really hit me hard, because I don't think, so I'll probably get emails about this, I don't think that the typical classroom is really set up for allowing for self-regulated agency. But I'm going to ask you, like, do you think it's different? How does it evolve? Tell me what you think, your thoughts about how it evolves through the different grade levels. Does it get better or worse? And then, well, I'll let you answer that first, and I'll ask you the part two to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of the things I love about my job is, being able to, as superintendent, create that sort of culture and that approach in a school district, and telling people that, we want to hear what our students have to say, and we want to hear their voice in decision making. And I went around to our students at the beginning of this year and just kind of talked about, we'd love to sit down and hear about your experience as a West Islip student, things we're doing well, things that we have to improve on. I met with numbers of students at different grade levels. One of the students I met with, Quinn Bedell, is one of our high school seniors. Met with him in September, talked about his ideas for the district. We had some great conversations there. He later ran for Board of Education and was just recently elected, so we have a student Board of Education member beginning on July 1st. And I think that's great. We've just started incorporating students on our committees that we have in the district, and just kind of bringing those voices forward first. I think the first thing is people need, a seat at the table. We need to be, when we do surveys, it's not just to staff and parents, it's asking students, what they think as well, and really looking at those results. And
valuing them with equity.
For sure.
I think there's a book we read, the what is Daniel Pink's book, right? The Right Brain World, right? Whatever. And for me, that whole story about how the guy in Hallmark who ran Hallmark, the CEO of Hallmark, went into the elementary school, the kindergarten classroom, said, who's the artist? And then they kept going, in kindergarten, everybody raised their hand. And by third grade, they were half the class. And by fifth grade, everybody pointed to the one kid who's an artist, and that, you know, I read that a while ago, and that really like had that visceral effect, like, oh my gosh, we got to get kids to realize their skills forever. But I think also as we move through school, school is a place of, I imagine, maybe I could be wrong, that when you're little, when you're younger, the elementary, yes, school is learning, but it's community, it's fun, it's where you go. And then when you get into these compartmentalized classrooms and you ask the students, why are you learning this? Well, because my teacher told me to. Like that's what the curriculum is. Maybe once we get to high school, we start to pick, right? The second that we start to pick the classes that we want to take. So we're now designing what our curriculum could be, but we're not really designing what's happening there. So my question to you is, who would have more difficulty allowing for student regulated agency, the students or the teachers or parents?
Honestly, I mean, it's a great question. There's a concept that Dintersmith talks about in the book called portfolios of joy. I don't know if you remember reading that part, but it stuck with me. And it was just, you know, that if you think about, you know, how you learn and what you're interested in and ways in which, and the ways in which you learn, you know, and that appeal to you. You know, there are so many things that we can do for all students, you know, if we look at, you know, what they're interested in and kind of trying to develop students in that way, you know, and you just look at the overall system that we have, doesn't work for everyone, you know. So I would say that it's not trying to work, back to that central theme, it's not trying to necessarily work within the system that we have, you know, to give students agency. It's more, you know, change the system, you know, and talk about
Yes.
what are the better ways that we can do this thing called school to meet the needs of all of our students in the building, you know?
Yeah, thanks for the segue once again, because I was thinking earlier when you were saying something that how do we change the system when we're already in it, right?
Mhm.
So we're operating. We can't all take a pause and and change. We're doing so. Changing from within, I think is difficult.
Yeah,
Doesn't
you
mean
know what?
I'm
I mean,
optimistic.
that's been an appeal to me for, you know, working at this superintendent level, because I think that things need to get changed sometimes, you know, at the state level and at the national level as well. And, you know, assessment is a huge piece of that. You know, the way that our students are assessed and the way that the data is reported, whether it's on, you know, in New York State, we have the New York State assessments for 3 through 8. We have Regents exams, you know, we have obviously AP and IB nationally and internationally, and looking at those different scores. But, you know, there are performance-based assessments that I know New York State is taking a look at and taking a look at that as a way to demonstrate mastery of learning. It's something that IB has done for a long time, you know, in terms of demonstrating mastery of learning, and just really looking at ways that we can redesign the system so that whether it's you're creating a portfolio of joy to talk about, you know, what you've really learned that you loved in school and kind of demonstrating that in the college application process, or you're, you know, there's a public demonstration of learning, you know, where everyone is invited in from the community to kind of see what you've done. I think that that's the big piece, is kind of
I
working
do.
with, you know, higher education, the state, you know, to really revamp what we're doing in that way.
And I think, like with testing, like I'm not an anti-tester. I think data is important. It's just the relevancy and the value that we give it. And it's part of a picture for us to, to see where and if we have to support students differently, but it shouldn't obviously be the only measure. I get nervous when people start saying, that's why data is bad and testing is bad. It's like, again, it's about shifting perceptions. I think what I really loved about your energy around this book and around the movie and the presentation was that you weren't letting we're never going to be able to change things until the state and the feds change it for us. So we're stuck in this box that they've given us, and you've been able to find language and small, not even small, pretty big. It's really about mindset, and mindset is that's the whole Ted Lasso effect, right? Like,
Yep.
just believe we can and we will.
Great show.
Great show. I mean,
And can I tell you,
inspiring.
we had George Koros in for Superintendent's Conference Day this year to
Right.
kick off the year, and he has the book Innovate Inside the Box, right? Talking about we're in a system right now. There's still room for innovation and working within the system that you're in, but I'm a big believer that if we start to do things so well that we can demonstrate for others that this is kind of the way that it's supposed to be, then that will impact the change, and that will be the way in which, we are able to give an example to New York State about, hey, check out what some of our students are doing. They may not score so well on a standardized test, but they may be creating this, and, they've demonstrated a tremendous mastery of their learning, this school year. And maybe you talked about the agency piece, maybe there are other students who prefer that. During the pandemic, that was a choice, that I know that IB gave. There were different ways in which you could take your assessment or demonstrate your learning, whether it was with a portfolio or a standardized type assessment, or many different ways to do that. So I think that we get into this one size fits all education model sometimes, and I think that we need to start looking at really the individual students and how we can create schools that really work for everyone.
That kind of talk, and I do think it's all about the language, the consistent and relentless language that we use that is around positivity and belief systems. I'm a big fan of that, but I also think that if we could take control of the narrative. So I love what George says, and the innovate inside the box. Like, yeah, you've given us this in New York State. We have regents and we have these test scores, but that doesn't have to be all that we have. So if we want to sing the song that celebrates who we are, then we write the lyrics and we can talk about this is our performance on this and this. But so here's your stats that you want, but look what else we did. We just have to spend the time defining those. There's lots of different ways that we can identify and categorize and teaching people to do that. And is, I think, where we can make some revolutionary change from a small place, right? I do think there was a student that I was a teacher that I was working with who told me that he had one of his students come back and was talking to his class, and the student worked at some really super innovative kind of place, someplace in Manhattan, which is one of those workspaces where it was like open space kind of environment. And he started talking to them about what work was like for him. And that it was like these jam sessions and these open court discussions. And he was just so excited about it. And one of the students in this said, "You mean exactly the opposite of what we do here." And he shared that with me about how blown away he was with that. So one of the chapters in the book was preparing them for what, right? Chapter 3, prepared from what?
And Kerry, you know what? We've had a great year of also been working with the Board of Education here in West Islip. We've done a number of visits to different schools to see what different things are going on across Long Island and innovative learning spaces out there. Can we start to kind of reimagine some of our spaces we have within the district, and create those sort of environments. So I think it's pretty cool, when you bring in student voice on that. We had students on our panel at the Most Likely to Succeed film screening night.
Right. Yes.
And just hearing their voices about, what they felt the future of education looked like, I thought was really powerful as well. So,
and the good news is that
a lot of good stuff going on out there.
They were able to articulate things that were happening that they felt very positive about. And you've only just begun this work. So, the work wasn't done yet. So I do also think that schools have these things within them. They're doing them already, but we need to highlight, point out, articulate, celebrate, whatever, all of the above, that we're doing it, and also value it, put it at the same value. I want to make sure that kid who maybe couldn't get into the IB class also has the opportunity to learn this way, right? Because they probably need it even more. Chapter 8 was, what things are we doing that are obsolete? Is there anything that you think that we are doing that obsolete that we need to let go of or change? Curriculum, maybe testing, maybe
I think
practice?
that, I think we've already started to make some really great changes in this area, and it's just been about, questioning and really like, the types of questions that we're asking students, and I talked about the whole, there's different, obviously we know the different levels, but just asking students to recall information is kind of a thing of the past in
Right.
education. It's really more of these open-ended type discussion questions of, I've mentioned it a couple times, but just different ways to demonstrate mastery. In the film Most Likely to Succeed, there's a big learning fair, that this kind of the
Yes.
end of the movie culminates to, where, the students start the year in a Socratic seminar classroom, and the teacher
Right.
says, okay, there's a picture on the board of this is what I want the tables to look like, and this is what I want the chairs to look like. And he says, set it up, I'll be right back, and walks outside of the room. And the students, they really struggle with an adult not being there telling them exactly what they need to do and move things around. But by the end of the year, these students are directing, plays to demonstrate what they've learned throughout the year. They're creating these huge STEM projects about ancient civilizations, and all the different gears have to kind of fit together to work and show a showcase of different ancient civilizations. So just that sort of thinking and just allowing students, to take control of their learning, I think is the big piece.
And a lot of, excuse me, patience involved in that, because in that film, we had the one group of students who quote unquote failed in their experiment, and they were not ready. And at the end of the year, and the teachers let it ride.
Mhm.
And that kid came back, as you know, over the summer to work on it, but it wasn't about the product, it was about the experience. And that was hard as a teacher who wants their children to succeed, their students to succeed. It was hard to watch. It was hard to watch the student fail.
And
And
administrators need to give. That's what I was trying to get to before. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Get to that whole piece about freedom before, of that. If I'm if I was there and on top of those teachers about getting certain results or seeing progress or things like that, that student never would have got to the point that he did, where it wasn't about the grade for him or anything. It was like he was back over the summer and working on this and just wanted to make it work, and he eventually got there.
meaningful learning,
Mm-hmm. There you go.
right? Not just, putting it away and okay, that's done. Next year I'll start over. That was really,
Carrie,
truly
do you
meaningful learning.
remember this study in that book they shared in What School Could Be? Also, there was just, top schools that, administered final exams. The kids got A's,
Oh,
100%,
right.
whatever it was. And then they retested, in the fall.
Yes.
And the average grade was an F, and failing grades because
So what's
the
the point?
retention of that information, it was there. It was regurgitated for the test. They did well and played the game of school well. But then when it came time to really retaining the information, it wasn't there.
And the same with the calculus problem. The schools that didn't have offer calculus, so the administration was like, well, the problem is that calculus isn't available, and all the scientists and the mathematicians are saying the problem is that you're teaching calculus wrong. That's not how we do it in the real world. Give them a calculator. Let's move on. I thought that was very interesting. That again, it's about your perspective and what making learning meaningful, and is calculus meaningful in every the way we've had it designed. I don't mean calculus as a function, but calculus as we're teaching it. Is it
Yeah.
meaningful learning at the end of the day?
And
So
assessments drive that too, right, Carrie? Like if you took like a
sure.
look at some of the shifts in the SAT and things like that, including more statistics, because we've seen that, many more people use statistics in their jobs across different you're using it all the time. I'm using it in my job all the time. And we never want to, we always say this when we have these conversations, like that calculus is obviously extremely important, and we have students that are going to go on to use that in specific fields, and should be there to kind of expose students to the ways of thinking. I was a math major in college, and I have appreciation for all these different courses, but also designing programs that are meaningful, for students. So
Yeah, certainly. I would say that in all my learning, as a business and a marketing major, and then going back into education, statistics probably should have been the most important thing in all of those fields, both of those fields,
For sure.
to learn, and we didn't learn them, and then when we did, it was very compartmentalized. I think one of the things I would love is that they talked about teaching. I think this was in this one when they talked about if you want to teach a kid how to ride a bike, first we're going to learn the history of bikes, then we're going to have a diagram of a bike and learn all the parts of the bike, and before we put them on the bike. It's like, what if we did everything that way? Hey, by the way, what you're doing right there is calculus. Let me show you how that works. How
I eventually learned learned the math that I needed when getting my doctorate on YouTube. I was doing the statistics. I'm on YouTube. I'm kind of watching the video, see what's going on.
I tell you what, my son was one of the first crew that went through the capstone program. And he did the seminar and the research project, the AP seminar, AP research. And he was right away, they were into these projects, and we had to learn. I had to show him how to do statistics with the Excel and using the graphs in there to kind of calculate. And the teachers didn't know. The teacher's like, we would love to help you, but we don't know this, so we don't know how to help you. So interesting. So I could keep you on forever, but I don't want to. So I'm going to give you some takeaways. So you were so good at coming up with an overarching message for the book. Do you think I can ask you to come up with, as a student of this book, as a disciple of this progressive, revolutionary way of thinking, would you be able to give a message for, let's say, new teachers?
Oh, that's great. I love speaking to our new teachers, hiring new staff, you know what I mean? And also, we have some amazing veteran teachers here too that I love having the conversation.
That was going to be my next bullet. So you can give me new teachers and then veteran teachers.
What do they need to hear from each other? That's what it is. Tying them together is that we can learn from each other. I think that I want all my new teachers that we hire to know that it's all about the students and doing what's best for our students, and constantly designing our instruction and our programs to meet the needs of the students in the room. And if someone's not learning in a traditional way, really being able to be reflective enough to be thinking about, okay, well, what other things can I do in the classroom to help them as a learner. So
I love that. And in order to be able to learn from each other, both veterans and new teachers, they absolutely have to embrace, or at least let a little vulnerability in. Because,
sure.
I have to know that even though I've been teaching for 20 years, I may not know this new thing now, and that's okay. And I did notice in your bio, as I was doing my research on your background, that one of the words that was associated with what you believed in was collaboration. So way to be consistent there.
100%.
How about parents? What would you say to parents?
In regards to innovation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, so I was so happy to see the amount of parents that showed up at our Most Likely to Succeed film screening. It was amazing just to have those conversations. Like talking about teaching and learning is, my favorite part of the job, and it's so interesting that that's, not always what dominates the conversations. There's a lot of other things going on. So I think that, parents feeling free to share their concerns about this type of, approach and work. You see a lot of the parents in the film or the book talk about, okay, well, this is a great idea, but how is it going to affect my child from getting into college, or those sort of things. So really just, I think it's all about just us building relationships and trust, with one another, that we can work together.
I'm so glad you said trust. Yes.
Yeah, because it's big. It's big. That's been the number one theme this year that I've learned in talking to parents in the community. Has just been about everybody just wants to be able to trust what the schools are doing, and the approach that we're taking. But that conversation and open line of communication between us is the most important thing, so that people know exactly what's going on and what the vision is.
We are so simpatico. I love it so much. So I can't wait to do the next one with you. So before I let you go, I want to ask you, what's on your desk right now? What are you reading? What's next?
What am I reading right now? So I'm reading Fish in a Tree, which is a more younger
Oh,
book, but that's with one of my
nice.
10-year-olds. We're reading that. We have like rotating bedtime stuff that we're reading. So I have Dogman with my 6-year-old. I've got Fish in a Tree with my 10-year-old, and then I
Awesome book.
also have the other guy is more into graphic novels, so he's doing the Amulet series on
Okay,
graphic novels. And then
love
I've been
it.
big on my my commute, just listening to audiobooks and things like that. I'm actually listening to a book right now that we're doing in part of, I'm always in like some sort of a book club or something like that. We're reading a book
Love it.
called High Conflict, and
Okay.
it's by Amanda Ripley. It's really great. It's just talking about, like this is an interesting, the superintendent position is an interesting one because there's a lot of conflict out there, and we're in a really polarizing time, where any issue that comes up, there are people on both sides of the fence. And it's more about like living in that conflict in a place where it's not going to consume you, and to understand that there really are two sides of the story, but trying to find that, like, the big thing we're talking about right now in our school district, happens to be armed guards in the school district. Should we have
Sure.
armed guards or not? And both sides, when you listen, both sides have great points. But at the end of the day, everybody just wants our students to be safe. That's it. So it's just about kind of hearing people out, building a consensus, and then making a decision and understanding that we went through a process, a decision was made, and we move forward, and not living there and trying to constantly be
We
undoing
can,
decisions that the other side has made, and that there aren't really two different sides. We all want
yeah,
the same thing. We're just
right.
listening to each other.
We can both want the same thing and have different perspectives of how to get there. I
Right.
think that's an important message that maybe our entire society can hear.
Yep.
Politically speaking as well. Thank
Mhm.
you so much, Paul. I mean, this was amazing because you are amazing and so easy
You're
to talk
amazing,
to.
Carrie, and I'm so thankful that you invited me on this
You will
podcast.
be back.
So
You
happy
will
to be
be
here.
back.
Absolutely. Will you come and actually visit? I want to like show you some things in action in the schools,
Can I
like visit some
please? Can I
classrooms.
please? Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll
this
do
would
a
be
quick
a great
walkthrough.
carryover for that. So would
Great.
love to. We'll
We'll
get
do
that
like
on
an
the
on
books.
location sort of
That'd be
film
great.
or something.
That's it. Where in the world is Kerry Leo?
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, before I go, I do want to say that one of my favorite things, in my position now, doing a lot of the professional development, I don't, unless I'm modeling something in a classroom, I don't always get that. And your team allowed me to come in and see some of the work that we were working on and like where your amazing teachers are now. I mean, moved mountains, and it was one of my favorite days this entire year to go to some of these classrooms and watch your most challenged learners overcome obstacles that nobody believed they ever could. And I was thrilled for your director Jeannie Dowling to take me through there, but that's why we do what we do. So I would be happy to come
Absolutely.
see the classrooms.
Wonderful. Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're amazing, and we will be there soon.
Take care. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye.